This matrix is a construct of ultimate separation. Not only are we separated from each other as individual souls, which would be in order, but we are also separated further by the treatment we receive in the Between Lives area, BLA, where the overlords split our souls, rob us of our previous individuality, and patch us together using X amount of soul fires from different other souls to create a new being. On top of that, we are recycled into a new body, which is split further into the ancestral lines from both our parents. See our videos 45 and 46 for more information. When we enter a body in this matrix, this body has of course nothing to do with us. We inherit the DNA from our parents, with all the trauma and separation that's connected to it. Body memories are just a compilation of the experiences of unrelated soul composites that have imprinted their lives' experiences into the DNA of the body we now possess. This means that we are first split in the DNA as souls, and then we're further split when we take a body here on earth. Thus, there are splits upon splits upon splits. What are the consequences of this splitting? It creates great confusion, amnesia, and trauma. In fact, we are coming to this life as a whole soul composed of fires from different other souls, but because of the treatment we received in the BLA just before being recycled, we are traumatized already before birth. Then add all our mother's trauma during the pregnancy that we experienced with the same intensity as she did while we were in her womb. So we were born already traumatized and confused, and this pattern continues and magnifies throughout our lifetime. Then the same cycle will repeat over and over, lifetime after lifetime. Therefore, pat yourself on the back for having been able to figure things out up to the point you're at in this moment. It's a monumental achievement. Because of all these splits that leads to severe separation, we can't be anything but confused, whether we realize it or not. Confusion is when particles and thoughts are all over the place, i.e. it's chaos. We might think of it as normal, but the entire human soul group is confused. Even we, who are at this point in our research, are still in a state of relative confusion. What do people do when they are confused? They look for an anchor point. And what is an anchor point? It's a stable point to hold on to and ground ourselves at. Sometimes it doesn't matter what this anchor point is, so long as it momentarily diminishes the confusion. It's basically a way to ground our minds. Later, when confusion sets in again, we look for a new anchor point, and so on. Sometimes people hang on to a certain anchor point for a long time just to get relief and peace of mind, regardless whether this anchor point is related to something that's true or not. This is a major reason why we are so easy to manipulate. After putting us in a state of confusion, we can be easily programmed. Every day we see examples of how society is confusing us and then giving us anchor points to hold on to. In a state of confusion, they can program us with anything and say it's true, and most people will grab these anchor points like a drowning person would reach for anything that looks like a lifesaver or a lifeline of sorts. Mass media is bombarding us with fear-mongering, whether it's based on truth or not. It really doesn't matter, because the major purpose is to scare us and confuse us. Even if what the media tell us is fact and is presented as bad news, most of the time events are manufactured on a higher level of the control system anyway. The effect of this bombardment is fear and confusion. The more frequently people follow the news, the more confused they become, and when the same media sources then present a solution to further the agenda of the overlords, people grab these solutions and call them truth. They hang on to these anchor points to cope, even if the solution is to go to war. The war then creates more confusion, which is resolved by the media, throwing out another anchor point, etc. That's how manipulation works. Eventually, when people have had enough and need some peace of mind, their minds escape and try to find their own anchor points. This is where technology comes into the picture as a covert solution. People escape into their devices and start living in that world instead, which becomes their new anchor point. Thus, more and more people are drawn into technology, and there they create another reality that seems less threatening. Others escape into their minds, to their own imaginary world, or they flee into the field of spirituality. There they learn that they should disregard all bad news and only concentrate on what makes us feel good. If something doesn't make us feel good, we should resist it. So we're told. But if we adopt this latter mindset, how do we learn? We won't learn anything about the reality, and we will not learn very much about ourselves either. Most of the time, higher levels of truth are rarely comfortable or pleasant at the first glance, and it sometimes induces fear and discomfort in people at first. This only means that there is something inside us that needs to be addressed, i.e. our own fears. After all, it's fears that holds us back from expansion. We can't conquer our fears by pushing them aside and pretend they're not there. It might work for a while, but eventually they will catch up with us. If something feels fearful, that's exactly what needs to be addressed and healed. Finding and living the truth is all about overcoming our fears. The more fears we overcome, the less confused we will be, and perhaps we start looking in the right directions instead of just grabbing for any anchor point to ground ourselves to, because it temporarily makes us feel better. There is a difference between fear-mongering and the fear we might feel when we encounter an uncomfortable truth. Fear-mongering comes from someone who intentionally wants to instigate fear in others for their own selfish purpose or agenda, while presenting uncomfortable information to people with an intention to make them think from an expanded awareness. It's often a necessity because of the kind of matrix we live in. If we will withhold the uncomfortable truth and only relay what makes people feel good, we are all doing each other a huge disfavor, and it's no better than what the global elite does when they withhold important information from us that could benefit us. We don't want to be like them, so don't hesitate to tell your truth to others, even if it might feel uncomfortable for the receiver, so long as you think it might help them. When we encounter an uncomfortable truth, our minds usually go through 4 stages. 1. We might become fearful. 2. If we investigate further, we eventually understand it intellectually. 3. We begin to apply this new information/truth to ourselves to reintegrate it. And 4. It becomes part of ourselves. This is very important to understand, so let's put this in a broader perspective. We started this video by talking about splits. When Ariel and I first released this information in videos 45 and 46, many people were probably shocked, and some became fearful and even resentful, both towards us and the overlords, respectively. This is normal, and it's stage 1, as discussed above. After that, people who were willing to objectively look at this might have concluded that this could make sense, stage 2. Now we need to move to stage 3. How do we apply this? We assume that many of our followers felt uncomfortable with that we are composed by fires from other souls. E.g., we have John Smith's, Mary Jones's, Jose Gonzalez's, and Corin Swenson's fire inside us, etc., blended with our own. In fact, we need to come to terms with that there is no you. and there might not be one single fire in your current soul that is the same fire as your last incarnation. However, which incarnation? In fact, all these fires have their own incarnations. So who can you say was you in the last incarnation? The answer will be all of them. You in your last incarnation is none of these fires, and still you are all these fires. It sounds like a paradox, doesn't it? Still, you are just a composite of trillions of random fires from different humans put together as one new soul. Therefore, you are both John, Mary, Jose, and Karen. John is as much you as Karen is, and so on. Thus, it doesn't make sense to think that you don't want to have John's or Mary's fire attached to you when they are you in your current life. All these personalities make up you. I'm sure none of us feels comfortable with being treated like this in the BLA, but if this is what is happening, it's nonetheless the truth, scary or not. Thus, what are we going to do about it at this moment? The best thing to do is to accept that this is what it is, and therefore embrace all these fires and accept them as ours, as being you, the individual. And again, from a higher perspective, does it matter if you're walking around with other people's fires inside? No. Souls are just probes, life energy sent out by the divine to explore and experience. We are all one on the highest level, so it's all just experience anyway. The problem is that when we're ignorant about this, we get confused because of conflicting data coming into our mind from different internal souls' experiences. And we sometimes don't know what are our experiences and someone else's experiences, leading to confusion unless we grasp this whole concept. When we do grasp this concept, we have the choice to integrate it as our own experiences across the multiverse and the lines of time. When we do this, we are accepting ourselves the way we are now, and we can move on from there, having new experiences from that perspective. There is a lot of healing taking place when we can do this from a heart level and not only from an intellectual level. After all, if you leave the matrix now, what you have now is what you will bring with you. People who have out-of-body experiences, OBEs, or near-death experiences, NDEs, often say that they feel so much better after having left their bodies on these soul journeys. And particularly in NDEs, people don't want to return to their bodies. Of course they don't. By leaving their bodies, they leave the entire ancestral line behind, with all the trauma and confusing experiences they have been bombarded with on a conscious and subconscious level all their lives. However, little do they know that even in their soul state, they are divided and split. Therefore, it's so important to comprehend this information, because if we don't, we will still be confused by all these different fires' diverse experiences. Only by integrating all these fires and accept them as all being you, you can become whole again. In a sense, one could say that your life started when you were born in this lifetime, because that's when your current personality began to be developed. There are many people who want to fight this system, both by using violence or in peaceful manners, in attempts to change things around so we can finally live in peace. This is noble and compassionate, but is it possible if we look at it from the above perspective? Even if we came together and managed to take out the global elite and their lackeys, would that solve the problem? I don't believe it would, for several reasons. First, we still deal with our trauma, both on the soul level and on ancestral level, and all these conflicts inside also create conflicts with people around us. Even if we would have peace for a while, our own wounds and triggers would eventually replace the bad guys with new bad guys. The new boss, same as the old boss. the shape we're in as a soul group, will probably prevent us from even reaching our goal, because we would start fighting internally within the liberation group. Then, let's say that we actually would succeed as a soul group to kick out all the conspirators from high places. What would happen next? Theoretically, we could start the healing process and the reintegration process on ourselves and together with others. But even if that would work, this is not our home. This matrix is a matrix of decay and death. Everything dies here, without exception. Death was not part of the original experiment. We were supposed to make it in one go. There was no aging and no death as we know it. Here we would still live within the rule set of this matrix of life and death. And after we die, where would we go? Who would recycle us back if the overlords were also out of the picture? We humans are not supposed to have the technology that recycles souls. Even if you disregard this issue, it still doesn't make sense to fight the system. Isn't it easier to work on ourselves, come to insights, and then leave? I'm personally not out to get revenge, because that puts me in a game condition where blame and retaliation comes into play, which is a reptilian fight or flight situation. We all have the free will to do what we want, and it is certainly not Ariel's and my intention to force people to choose the same path as we do. So those who want to go another route and have another option they want to use, they have all the rights to do that. We are all in a position to follow our own hearts, and that's what we should do.